Our next segment, I'm really excited to talk about because I think it's really important that we do. Often, I hear from women who haven't traveled as much or who would like to travel but just don't know how to start. The biggest thing stopping them is fear. And the best way to blast through that fear is with information and with power. So today we're going to talk about worst case scenario and give you some tips for what you can do when things go wrong in your travels. I would love if you would help me in welcoming to the stage three incredible women. Miss Tracy Breeden of Uber. Rachel Redwall, also known as Rachel Rooms, and Stephanie Zito. This segment came up really organically at a bar, as most good topics do, where Rachel and I were talking about some things that had gone wrong in our travels and a lot of things that had been happening recently with cancellations. I'm sure you're all familiar with what's been happening in the space. And we really thought, well, we should really just talk about like what happens when things go wrong and how you can be proactive and remain safe while traveling. What happens when things go wrong with your health, and what can you do?
Paying for insurance and not knowing if you need it is kind of a bummer, right? Insurance is really expensive, and it's just for the worst case scenario, typically. But for the last several years, I've had an annual travel insurance plan because I travel so much to such far-flung places that I'm like, well, it's a big what if, but I'll keep it in place. And I was going on an assignment up to the Arctic to an archipelago off the coast of Norway called Svalbard. And I brought a crew member with me. We were creating media up there. And she was like, oh, I've always thought about getting, travel insurance, but I don't have any. And I was like, oh my gosh, how could you? You need to get a plan. Not that I had used mine yet. So she got health insurance. The next week, she got appendicitis. On a boat in the Arctic. And it was a real bad series of days. But because she had her plan, I use Allianz, that was what I recommended, she was okay. She was okay because she had structures in place to protect her when something did go wrong. She ended up not having to pay out of pocket for those expensive hotels, hospital stays, all of that. I, myself, had to use my Allianz plan last summer. I had a 2-week trip planned where I was going to be going to Central Asia, and I was going to be doing things like trekking in this mountain range in Georgia, not the state, but the country, which is far enough away that that's what I like about it. However, I was having some weird medical symptoms. Women, our bodies change a lot, like daily. Sometimes I fit in my pants, sometimes I don't. But we know when something's wrong, right? Like something's really weird. So I went to the doctor, and I got a blood test. And the doctor was like, you cannot leave the country tomorrow. You're at risk of a rupture, and you could bleed out. And I was like, I don't even know what this means, but it sounds bad. So I was stubborn. I called ahead to a friend that I was going to be meeting in Armenia, and I was like, do you have health stuff in place? Like, she works with the State Department. So I was like, what happens if I have internal bleeding? Worst case scenario, are we cool? And she's like, obviously not. You would get medevaced. And I was like, I have to be within 2 hours of safety. Copy that. I will cancel my trip. And I finally got my money's worth for those years I've been paying into my Allianz plan, because when I needed to cancel 2 international flights, my hotel stays, my visas, all of that for all of these countries, I was visiting 3 of them. So you can imagine the cost that you take on when you're planning a multi-country trip. It was all reimbursed. All I had to do was provide proof that the doctor had said I couldn't travel because I might die. Seems important. Cancellations from the hotel saying, hey, we're not reimbursing you. And the rest was covered. Planning for the worst case scenario is a really important way to go about things. Not because you should be spending your time thinking what's the worst that could happen, You'll go into a downward spiral. We all do that. We stay up late at night and we're like, what's the worst that could happen? Oh dear, it's bad. But usually it's not that bad. So think of the things that could actually be bad. Take care of them. Plan for them. You usually do not need those support structures, but if and when you do, you're going to be much better off.
What do you do when things go wrong with your hotel stay or your accommodation?
I always book reservations that you can cancel. It costs a little bit more upfront sometimes, but I use Booking.com, and I will just filter for the hotels that you can cancel at no cost to yourself up to like 24 hours in advance or 3 days in advance or what have you. So that's a really good way to protect yourself. Spend $10, $20 more upfront, and then make sure if anything changes, even if you just decide you don't want to go on the trip. I'm too busy with work. I'm not going to go. You can cancel, and it's okay. Another thing to keep in mind when you are booking places to stay, I've done the budget travel and the couch surfing thing. I did it for many, many years. Now I will pay for safety. I will pay to not sleep on some dude's crusty couch and wonder whether he's mouth breathing on me in the night, right? I will also pay to take the taxi from the airport to where I'm staying. I will pay to stay in a place that has 24-hour security and concierge. I will pay to stay in a place that has streetlights. It's little stuff like that that means you're much more likely to be okay, right? Because you're taking all the proper precautions. You got all that heavy luggage, maybe you packed too many shoes. I see you, girl. You don't want to schlep that at 1 a.m. through a metro that's unfamiliar with a map that's in another language. Just get the taxi or get the Uber. Hashtag not sponsored.
When the worst happens, you're traveling, you're assaulted in some way, what is your advice, and this is for any of you, in terms of getting back on the horse, so to speak?
I think the most important thing is to give yourself permission to find, like Stephanie's saying, what works for you. Women are often under the assumption, based on what we've been taught by our society, that we have to look like we have it all together all the time. Which is why when things happen to us or we don't have it all together, we fake it, we bottle it up, we put on a brave face. That only get you so far, because you don't want to carry what you don't need. And carrying trauma is a thing you don't need. So taking the time and giving yourself permission to be okay with stepping back is really important. I know that I wanted to dye my hair black, learn the martial arts, swear off men. My mom was like, you look like you're going to murder people. And I'm like, and? And that was a part of my learning to, one, feel like I was putting up that brave face, that like scary energy. Don't cross me. But also, I learned, I did do one of the physical safety trainings, and I did it with a friend who'd also experienced assault. And both of us just felt so much more capable stepping out into the world. It doesn't mean that we've had to use the tips and tricks, but we feel available to experience the world differently now that we feel more capable. So give yourself permission to step back, to learn, to be pissed off, to hurt, and to assemble a tribe of allies that are going to look out for you while you figure out when you're ready to step back out there.
I'm really happy that we can sit here and speak honestly and vulnerably and share stories and share tips. I think it's so, so critically important that we're armed with this information. Traveling the world can feel a little intimidating sometimes because you're in situations that are new to you, unfamiliar to you, but navigating those successfully creates this sense of personal power that really cannot be matched. So I want to end this topic on asking you all one very important question. We've talked about a lot of heavy things, things that are a little bit scary and how you can navigate them, but what are some things that travel has given each of you?
First and foremost, people who've been out there traveling, having adventures, seizing the world, as it were, they're not fearless. So you should know that experiencing and feeling fear is par for the course. But you should also know that what you do with fear determines your entire life. So if you can look fear in the eye and be like, okay, I see you. What are you trying to tell me? And then just go fucking do what you're going to do, your life will look really different. So none of this is about being fearless. It's about saying yes to things. It's about putting structures in place to protect yourselves. It's about choosing to ask, why not? And also, when you travel, you will find that you are tiny. You don't matter at all. No offense. And that is really freeing. It takes so much pressure off to see that you're connected to a system that is so much bigger than you are. That is beautiful. It's really magic to be humbled by it all. So if you step out the front door and you say yes, you'll be made small, and you'll really appreciate that you get to exist on this rock flying through space.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for what you do in this space.